Living in a rough neighborhood during my college years was a constant challenge. My name is Alex, and I'd learned to keep my wits about me in the area, especially late at night. The streets were often dimly lit, and the sound of sirens was a regular background noise to my study sessions. However, the sense of danger was a distant thought as I finally finished my last exam of the semester. Relief washed over me, a weight lifting off my shoulders as I closed my laptop. The stress of endless nights filled with cramming and caffeine was behind me, at least for now. This semester had been brutal. The exams were tough, with professors piling on the hardest questions they could think of. My brain felt fried from the constant pressure, but it was all worth it. I had made it through. I felt like celebrating, and nothing sounded better than a hot, cheesy pizza. Furthermore, I picked up my phone and placed an order from my favorite pizzeria, already anticipating the first bite. Pizza was my go-to comfort food, and it felt like the perfect way to reward myself for surviving another semester. The estimated delivery time was 30 minutes. I leaned back on my couch, scrolling through social media and texting friends about plans for the upcoming break. As the minutes ticked by, I felt my stomach growling louder. An hour passed and I started to get impatient. I called the pizzeria to check on my order, but they assured me the delivery was on its way. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a knock echoed through my small apartment. I jumped up, eager to get my hands on that pizza. But when I opened the door, my excitement turned to apprehension. The delivery guy standing before me looked anything but professional. He wore a worn-out hoodie with the hood pulled low over his eyes, and his hands were shoved deep into his pockets. and his posture was tense. You Alex?" he asked, his voice rough and strained. "Yeah, that's me," I replied, trying to keep my tone steady. He handed me the pizza box, and I noticed his hands were trembling slightly. He avoided making eye contact, his gaze darting around the hallway as if he expected someone to jump out at any moment. His nervousness was palpable, and it set me on edge. "Sorry for the delay," he mumbled, almost inaudibly. There was no smile, no friendly banter, just a quick, almost desperate handoff. He was clearly in a hurry to leave. "Thanks," I said, taking the box from him. But before I could ask any questions, he turned on his heel and practically sprinted down the hallway. I watched through the peephole as he disappeared into the shadows outside, his behavior leaving a trail of unease in its wake. I closed the door and locked it, a sense of unease settling over me. The guy had been incredibly nervous, more so than any delivery person I'd ever encountered. His anxiety had transferred to me, and I felt my own heartbeat quicken in response. Setting the pizza on the kitchen counter, I tried to shake off the encounter. Maybe he was just having a bad night, I reasoned, but something about the whole situation didn't sit right with me. I decided to check the contents of the box more carefully. The pizza looked normal, but something still felt off. Just as I was trying to shake the uneasy feeling, my phone buzzed on the counter. I picked it up, expecting a message from a friend, but my breath caught when I saw the number was unknown. The message was explicit and threatening. My stomach churned as I read the crude words, my mind immediately flashing back to the delivery guy. Was it from him? Had he sent it while he was still in the building? My mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach as I considered my options. Should I call the police? Confront the pizzeria? The sense of celebration I'd felt earlier was completely gone, replaced by a creeping dread. Another message came through from the same number. "I know where you live. Don't ignore this." My hands shook as I read it, the weight of the threat settling heavily on my shoulders. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. This was no longer just a strange delivery. It was something much more sinister, and I had no idea what to do next. The threatening messages left me shaken. My hands trembled as I clutched my phone, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. I couldn't ignore this. I needed to call the police. Taking a deep breath, I dialed 911 and waited for the operator to pick up. 911, what's your emergency? A calm voice asked. I received some threatening messages, I stammered, from an unknown number, and the delivery guy who brought my pizza seemed really suspicious. The operator asked for my address and a brief description of the situation. I explained everything, from the strange behavior of the delivery guy to the explicit messages I received immediately after. They assured me that an officer would be dispatched to take my statement. When the police arrived, I felt a small sense of relief. I recounted the events of the night, showing them the messages on my phone. The officers took notes and asked a few questions, but their demeanor suggested they weren't overly concerned. "Do you have any reason to believe someone might want to harm you?" one officer asked. "No, not at all. I don't have any enemies," I replied, frustration creeping into my voice. "But these messages, they're really unsettling." "We understand," the officer said. "We'll file a report, but without more evidence, there's not much we can do right now. Keep your doors locked and call us if anything else happens." They left, and their lack of urgency left me feeling even more vulnerable. It was clear that without more evidence, this incident wasn't a priority for them. I was on my own. As the night wore on, I found myself jumping at every little sound. The usual creaks and groans of the apartment seemed louder, more menacing. My mind raced with possibilities, each one more terrifying than the last. What if the person behind the messages was watching me right now? What if they planned to do more than just send threats? I double-checked the locks on my doors and windows, my heart pounding in my chest. Sleep seemed impossible. Every shadow, every rustle outside made me jump. I tried to tell myself that it was just a scare, that the delivery guy was probably just a creep and nothing more. But the fear had taken root deep inside me. The next day, I found it hard to concentrate on anything. My mind kept drifting back to the messages, the sinister implication behind them. I started to question my own safety, feeling a growing sense of paranoia. Was someone following me, watching my every move? I knew I had to be cautious, but the anxiety was starting to take its toll. The sense of dread hung over me like a dark cloud, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was going to happen. The celebration I had planned turned into a nightmare, and I couldn't see a way out. After the stressful encounter with the delivery guy and the unsettling messages, I decided to take a break and head home for the holidays. It was my birthday, and I needed the comfort of my family and the familiarity of my childhood home. The thought of home, with its warm memories and familiar faces, was a welcome escape from the tension that had taken over my life. The journey home was uneventful, and soon enough I was greeted with open arms by my family. The warmth and love they showered on me were just what I needed to forget the anxiety and fear that had been gnawing at me. For a few days, I managed to push the worries to the back of my mind, focusing instead on celebrating with my loved ones. But all too soon, the holiday came to an end, and it was time to return to my apartment. As I made my way back, a sense of unease began to creep in. The memory of the threatening messages and the police's indifferent response loomed large. I tried to shake off the feeling, telling myself that everything would be fine. When I arrived at my apartment building, I noticed nothing unusual. The hallways were quiet, just as I had left them, but as I approached my door, I saw that it was slightly ajar. My heart sank. Had I forgotten to lock it before I left? I pushed the door open, expecting to see my family inside, perhaps planning a surprise for my return. "Hello? Is anyone here?" I called out, my voice echoing in the silence. But as I stepped inside, the sight that greeted me made my blood run cold. The apartment was a mess. Furniture was overturned, drawers pulled out, and their contents scattered across the floor. It looked like a tornado had ripped through the place. My initial thought that my family might be responsible quickly vanished. They would never leave the apartment in such disarray. Panic set in as I realized the implications. Someone had been here, someone who had no right to be. I quickly checked my belongings, half expecting to find valuables missing. But strangely, nothing appeared to be stolen. My laptop, TV, and other electronics were all untouched. The only thing missing was my sense of security. I sat down amidst the chaos, trying to make sense of it all. Why would someone break in and not take anything? Was this a warning? A message meant to scare me even more? The fear that had been a constant companion over the past few weeks surged back with a vengeance. I called the police once more, reporting the break-in. They arrived, took notes, and surveyed the scene, but their response was much the same as before. Without any clear evidence or leads, there was little they could do. Their reassurances did nothing to quell my growing anxiety. As they left, I felt more alone than ever. The safety and comfort of my home had been violated, and the lingering threat was more real than ever. I couldn't shake the feeling that whoever had done this was still out there, watching, waiting for their next move. And I had no idea how to protect myself from a danger I couldn't see. The days that followed were a blur of paranoia and fear. Every noise, every shadow seemed menacing. I knew I couldn't live like this forever, but I had no idea how to reclaim the peace of mind that had been so violently taken from me. The break-in left me rattled, my apartment a chaotic mess that mirrored my state of mind. I knew I had to take action. As much as I dreaded another lukewarm response from the authorities, I called the police to report the incident. An officer arrived within the hour, and I walked them through the disarray. They took notes, asked questions, and examined the scene. But as the minutes ticked by, I could sense their growing skepticism. Nothing was missing, and there were no signs of forced entry. It was as if the intruder had a key. "We'll do our best to investigate," the officer assured me, though his tone lacked conviction. "But without any clear evidence, it's difficult to determine what happened here." I nodded, understanding their position but feeling the frustration all the same. After they left, I sat among the overturned furniture and scattered belongings, trying to piece together my next steps. The sense of violation was overwhelming, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the break-in was connected to the strange delivery and the threatening messages. My thoughts kept drifting back to the delivery guy, his nervous demeanor, the way he avoided eye contact, and the immediate appearance of the disturbing texts. It all seemed too coincidental, but without any solid proof, my suspicions were just that, suspicions. I decided to take matters into my own hands. I started by contacting the pizzeria, asking about the delivery guy. The manager was cooperative, but had little information. The delivery guy was new, hired only a few weeks ago. He had seemed reliable at first, but had missed several shifts recently. "Do you have his contact information or address?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Sorry, I can't give out that information," the manager replied. "But if you want, I can reach out to him and see if he'll talk to you." "Please do," I said, leaving my number and hoping for a callback. In the meantime, I tried to focus on cleaning up my apartment and restoring some semblance of order. But every time I straightened a picture or picked up a scattered item, I felt a surge of anger and helplessness. Days passed with no word from the pizzeria or the delivery guy. The police checked in once, but they had no new information. The investigation seemed to be at a standstill, and my anxiety grew with each passing day. One evening, as I was trying to study, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, my heart skipping a beat when I saw it was an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello? Hi. This is the manager from the pizzeria." I spoke with the delivery guy. He said he doesn't know anything about the break-in or the messages. He seemed really nervous, though. "Did he say why?" I asked, my suspicions flaring up again. "No, he just said he didn't want any trouble. I don't know what to make of it, but I thought you should know." "Thank you," I said, ending the call. The conversation left me more confused and paranoid than ever. If the delivery guy was innocent, then who was behind this? And if he was guilty, how could I prove it? I couldn't keep living in fear, but I also couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something was deeply wrong. As I sat in the dim light of my apartment, I resolved to find answers. I would keep pressing, keep looking for any clues, no matter how small, because until I uncovered the truth, I would never feel truly safe again. Returning to college after the holidays should have felt like a fresh start, a return to normalcy. Instead, it brought a new wave of paranoia and fear into my life. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me, following my every move. It started subtly at first, a glimpse of a familiar face in the crowd, a shadowy figure lingering in the distance. I brushed it off as nerves, the lingering effects of the break-in and the unsettling messages. But as the days passed, the encounters became more frequent and more unnerving. I would see the same person at the grocery store, then again on campus. They never approached me, never spoke a word, but their presence was suffocating, a constant reminder that I was being watched. My suspicions turned back to the delivery guy. Was he stalking me? Had he followed me back to college? The more I dwelled on it, the more convinced I became. It seemed impossible to ignore the connection between the break-in and these eerie encounters. I became paranoid, jumping at every sound, scanning every face in the crowd. Sleep became elusive, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. I knew I needed help, but I didn't know where to turn. One evening, unable to bear the solitude any longer, I called a close friend and poured out everything that had been happening. She listened patiently, concern etched on her face. "You need to talk to someone," she said gently. "This isn't healthy, Alex. You're letting this fear consume you." I nodded, tears welling in my eyes. She offered to stay with me that night, to keep me company and help ease my anxiety. It was a small gesture, but it meant the world to me. That night I slept fitfully, my friend's presence a comforting anchor in the storm of my thoughts. In the morning, we talked about what I should do next. She suggested seeking counseling, someone who could help me sort through my fears and find a way forward. Reluctantly, I agreed. The thought of admitting I needed professional help was daunting, but I knew I couldn't go on like this. My friend promised to support me every step of the way, and together we researched counselors in the area. Over the next few weeks, therapy became a lifeline. I learned coping mechanisms to manage my anxiety, techniques to challenge my paranoid thoughts. Slowly, the grip of fear began to loosen. As I worked through my sessions, I started to question my earlier suspicions. Was it really the delivery guy? Or had my fear distorted my perception? The answers remained elusive, but I knew I was on the path to healing. With the support of my friend and the guidance of my therapist, I began to reclaim my life. I returned to my studies with renewed focus, determined not to let fear dictate my future. The encounters became less frequent, the paranoia less intense. I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could put this nightmare behind me. But deep down, a part of me still wondered. Was it over? Or was the shadow of the delivery guy still lurking, waiting for the right moment to strike again? The call from the police came unexpectedly, breaking through the uneasy calm that had settled over my life. They had made an arrest in connection with the series of break-ins, and the suspect was someone I had never expected, a former employee of the pizza delivery service linked to the delivery guy who had come to my apartment. I listened in disbelief as the officer explained the details. The suspect had been under surveillance for some time, and evidence had finally led them to make the arrest. My suspicions about the delivery guy weren't unfounded after all. It was a chilling realization that someone I had interacted with, however briefly, had been capable of such acts. Relief washed over me, mingled with lingering fear. The arrest brought closure to the mystery of the break-in, but it didn't erase the trauma of the experience. I was grateful that the police had acted and apprehended the suspect, yet I couldn't shake the feeling of vulnerability that had taken root in me. As I hung up the phone, I sank into a chair, emotions swirling inside me. The weight of what had happened settled heavily on my shoulders. I had been right to trust my instincts, to seek help when I needed it. But the scars left by the ordeal would take time to heal. With the support of my therapist and friends, I began to process the events that had turned my life upside down. I learned to recognize triggers that sparked anxiety and developed strategies to cope with lingering fears. Gradually, the sense of relief grew stronger, replacing some of the lingering unease. Returning to a sense of normalcy took time, but each day brought a little more confidence. I resumed my studies with renewed dedication, determined not to let fear hold me back. The nightmares became less frequent, and I found solace in the routines of daily life. Yet, a part of me remained cautious. The experience had taught me that danger could lurk where least expected. I became more vigilant, more aware of my surroundings. The trust I once took for granted had been shattered, replaced by a cautious optimism. As the months passed, the memory of the break-in faded into the background, a distant echo of a darker time. I focused on rebuilding, on forging ahead with newfound resilience. The experience had changed me, but it hadn't broken me. And as I looked to the future, I carried with me the lessons learned, the importance of trust, the power of resilience, and the strength found in confronting fears head-on. I was not the same person who had answered the door to a suspicious delivery guy that fateful night. I was stronger, wiser, and determined to live without fear dictating my life. The journey wasn't over, but I knew I was on the right path, a path toward healing, toward reclaiming my sense of security, and toward embracing the uncertainties of life with courage and resilience. With the arrest made, the police investigation delved deeper into the motives and actions of the suspect. I was called in to provide further statements and to learn more about what had transpired behind the scenes. During the interrogation, chilling details emerged. The suspect admitted to not only breaking into my apartment, but also to having watched and followed me for weeks prior. He had planned something far more sinister, but had been thwarted by the timely intervention of law enforcement. As the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, I learned another unsettling truth. The delivery guy had been complicit. He had provided information to the perpetrator, facilitating the break-ins by pinpointing vulnerable targets, including me. The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. The person I had initially suspected, the delivery guy who had seemed so suspicious, had indeed played a role in the terrifying events that had unfolded. It wasn't just a series of random acts. It was a targeted scheme, orchestrated with malicious intent. Anger and betrayal swirled within me. How could someone I had interacted with, however briefly, betray that trust so callously? The fear and paranoia I had endured suddenly made sense, but it offered little comfort. The sense of violation, of having been watched and targeted, lingered like a stain on my conscience. The police assured me that both individuals would face justice for their crimes. Charges were filed, and the legal process began its slow march toward resolution. Yet, even with the prospect of justice, I struggled to shake off the residual unease that had settled over my life. With the support of my therapist and loved ones, I continued to work through the aftermath of the ordeal. Each day brought a measure of healing, but scars remained, reminders of the vulnerability that had been exposed. As time passed, I found solace in reclaiming my sense of security, in rebuilding the trust that had been shattered. The journey toward closure was long and arduous, but with each step forward I grew stronger. The experience had taught me invaluable lessons about resilience, about the importance of listening to my instincts, and about the strength found in confronting adversity. I emerged from the ordeal with a newfound determination to live without fear dictating my life. And as I looked ahead, I knew that while the scars might fade, the lessons learned would endure, a testament to the power of courage, resilience, and the unwavering pursuit of truth. The decision was made swiftly, driven by a need for security and peace of mind. I couldn't stay in that apartment, haunted by memories of the break-in and the unsettling revelations that followed. With determination, I began searching for a new place, a sanctuary where I could start anew. The process wasn't easy, but eventually I found a more secure apartment, tucked away in a quieter neighborhood. It lacked the picturesque view of my previous place, but that was a sacrifice I was willing to make for my peace of mind. Moving into my new home felt like a fresh start, a chance to leave the past behind. Yet, the experience had left its mark, and I knew I needed more than just a change of scenery to feel safe again. I enrolled in self-defense classes, boxing and martial arts, to learn skills that would empower me to protect myself if ever faced with danger again. The training was rigorous, both physically and mentally demanding. It pushed me to confront my fears head-on and equipped me with techniques to defend myself. Alongside the physical training, I also took practical measures to enhance security in my new apartment, installing a security system, upgrading locks, and being vigilant about who I allowed into my space. As weeks turned into months, I began to notice a shift within myself. The constant vigilance and newfound skills instilled a sense of confidence, a belief that I could handle whatever challenges came my way. The fear that had once gripped me started to loosen its hold, replaced by a growing sense of security. I no longer jumped at every sound or scrutinized every passerby. Instead, I walked taller, carried myself with assurance, knowing that I had taken proactive steps to protect myself. The scars of the past remained, but they no longer defined me. Through it all, I found strength in resilience, the ability to bounce back from adversity and emerge stronger than before. The journey toward recovery wasn't easy, but each day brought me closer to reclaiming my sense of safety and reclaiming my life. As I settled into my new routine, I reflected on the lessons learned, the importance of trusting my instincts, the power of preparation, and the resilience found in facing challenges head-on. I was no longer the person who had answered the door to a threatening delivery guy or who had lived in fear of shadows. I was Alex, a survivor, empowered and ready to embrace the future with renewed confidence. Time passed, and gradually, I found myself settling back into a semblance of normalcy. The shadows of the past began to recede, replaced by moments of laughter and joy with friends who stood by me through it all. As the end of the academic year approached, I decided to celebrate with those closest to me. We gathered for a small, intimate gathering, sharing stories and laughter late into the night. My friends noticed a change in me, an ease in my demeanor, a lightness in my step that had been absent for too long. They remarked on how much stronger I seemed, how much happier. It was a testament to the journey I had undertaken, the battles fought both internally and externally. Each challenge had shaped me, molding me into someone resilient and unyielding in the face of adversity. As I looked around at the faces of those who had supported me, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. They had been my rock, offering unwavering support and encouragement when I needed it most. Their belief in me had bolstered my own, helping me to believe in my ability to overcome any obstacle. In that moment of celebration, surrounded by friends who had become family, I realized something profound. I had not just survived the ordeal, I had emerged stronger, more resilient, and more prepared for whatever life might throw at me next. The scars of the past had faded into insignificance, replaced by a newfound sense of confidence and inner peace. I no longer feared the unknown or doubted my ability to navigate life's challenges. Instead, I embraced the uncertainty, knowing that each experience had prepared me for this moment. As the night drew to a close and we said our goodbyes, I walked away with a renewed sense of purpose. The journey had been arduous, but it had led me to this point, a point where I could look back with pride on how far I had come and look forward with hope toward a future filled with possibilities. I had conquered my fears, faced my demons, and emerged victorious. This was not just the end of a chapter. It was the beginning of a new story, one filled with resilience, strength, and the unwavering belief that I could handle whatever came my way. With a heart full of gratitude and a spirit fortified by adversity, I embraced the dawn of a new beginning, one where I was no longer defined by fear, but by the courage to face life head-on, ready to write the next chapter of my story.